Hi, my name's Rob Scott from XR Today, bringing you the latest news and conversation from the extended reality space. So today I'm joined by author and head of XR at PwC UK, Jeremy Dalton, and we're going to be discussing his new book, Reality Check. Welcome, Jeremy. How's things?
Thanks a lot, Rob. Things are really great. I appreciate you having me here on the show.
No, it's a pleasure, honestly. And really to kick things off, Jeremy, and before we jump into the book, I'm keen to hear your background, I suppose, a little bit about how you got into extended reality. Could you give us a rundown, please?
Definitely. The summary of my background with regard to XR is that I have no background in XR. So to where I got today, it all started. Well, I wonder how back I go. I mean, I'd say the strands started to make sense once I started to do innovation work for PwC. So I was looking at virtual reality, augmented reality, but also other emerging technologies that had uses within business. Things like artificial intelligence, like blockchain, the 3D printing, robotics, drones, things like that. And I then realized very quickly that I wanted to add more value. And to do that, I needed to specialize in one area because it's really, really difficult to build a good level of understanding across all of those different technologies. And the reason I chose XR is because I find these technologies, virtual reality and augmented reality, just so unique, so exciting, so visceral and experiential. If you look at how they compare to other technologies, they are truly a unique proposition. Nowhere else do you get this ability to immerse yourself in completely different virtual environments so strongly, so impactfully. And with augmented reality, being able to present digital overlays of information in front of the world, next to you. And so I just decided that's the direction I'm going to go. I see incredible potential for both our personal and professional lives, and more than ever these days, we're certainly seeing it.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for that. It is game-changing tech. Now, in terms of your book, first of all, why did you write the book? Where did that come from?
I've been talking to a lot of businesses, a lot of different stakeholders in businesses, and middle management to C-suite, discussing the potential of XR technology. And it didn't really matter who I spoke to, and to be honest, this applies even outside of business as well. Whoever I was speaking to, they always felt that virtual reality and augmented reality were all about gaming, entertainment, fun, basically. And I'm not dissing fun. It's great that there are fun aspects to the technology as well. But unfortunately, that reputation preceded all of its other potential uses in the business world to such an extent that nobody could see the value that it holds across every single industry. So I found myself having to repeat the same old lines over and over again about how virtual reality can do all these amazing things in business, how they can create efficiencies, how they can save money, how they can save time, how they can save lives in some instances. And I thought to myself, well, if people keep asking about this, I think there is some scope to push a book out there that basically takes everyone from zero knowledge to, to a wholesome understanding of XR and what it can do in industry. And so that was my main motivation for the book. And I had a few side motivations as well to crush a few myths along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to come on to what's in the book as well. But you've absolutely done that. Now it's a complex subject, and I suppose from a target reader point of view, who would you say the ideal kind of reader would be of Reality Check?
So when I wrote this book, I always had in mind a business leader. Doesn't necessarily need to be C-suite level, but anyone in business who has some capacity to invest and get buy-in within their business on XR technologies. So I thought about it, and I also wanted that person not necessarily to have to come into reading my book with any prior knowledge. So I wanted to start from an absolute zero ground level, assuming no knowledge, adding no jargon into the book, and just making it really easy for them to consume the book, to understand all these different terms. You know, we've got augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, extended reality, and bringing that all together in a way that is easy to digest and takes you from not really knowing much about the technology to really getting a good understanding of how you could apply it in your business and the wide wealth of applications that are available.
Excellent. So let's talk through the book. And there's lots in it, but what would you say are the highlights? You know, what have people said that they've most enjoyed about the book?
So, I just said that I wrote this book for the business leader that is somewhat curious about XR technologies. But the interesting thing is the XR industry has also taken quite fondly to the book as well. And it was something I didn't really expect at such a high level. But I've been getting messages from people in XR saying, Jeremy, this book has been fantastic for me to articulate to my clients and communicate to them the value of virtual reality and augmented reality. And I really appreciate, you putting that down on paper. So I've had that feedback. I've had business leaders tell me it's an easy read. It wasn't too hard. It was in ways bedtime reading. They could just take it in as and when they wanted to. They could jump between sections, because although it's sort of a narrative that I've strung together, you can actually, jump in and out of the book at different segments. You don't necessarily need all of the knowledge of what came before it to get into the other areas. So I guess thinking about the highlights of the book, it first starts off with definitions. What is VR? What is AR? It sets out, how I've approached the book, why I've taken the direction that a lot of people didn't expect or might not expect. I didn't do this by industry. So I don't have a section on real estate, banking, pharmaceuticals, and so on. Because if I did that, I would find I would be duplicating and repeating a lot of information in every single section. Because with XR technology, it has applications that can be applied to many different industries. So instead of cutting it by industry, I've cut it by application. I talk about more at a high level or an abstractness of virtual reality and augmented reality. I talk about its strengths, why it's powerful in business, what makes it so powerful. I talk about applications in learning and development, in your own operations, for working together, for collaborating, for visualizing different environments and assets all over the world. From a sales and marketing perspective, thinking about the medium as a way of reaching your customers, enhancing e-commerce, acting as a new marketing medium. And then we go away from talking about the what into the how. How do you implement this technology successfully? Because it's not just about developing the software. You have to design the software before that. Even before that, you have to understand and discover all the different elements of the technology. And even once you've built the software, following that, you've got to actually successfully deploy it in your business, and you've got to gather data and analyze it to understand how did that implementation actually perform, and what are your next steps going to be off the back of that. Following that, we go into a little bit of a talk about all the challenges in these different areas. And we have a section that's contributed by a famous 360 video director and virtual reality director, a friend of mine called Alex Rule, who's worked on many projects at PwC with me. And it was a pleasure to have her contribution to the book around how you can create quality 360 video content, because that is one of the misconceptions that lacks understanding. And there's a lot of belief that 360 video is not real virtual reality in the industry. But the fact is that you can do so much with 360 video, and it's just a form of content. And whether it's computer generated or 360, you can view that within a virtual reality headset or in a virtual reality projected room around you, and you can have that immersive experience. So that was one of the misconceptions that I wanted to crush, alongside the fact that a lot of people think XR is only for entertainment. They think that virtual reality makes everyone sick. They think it's an isolating technology. They think it's going to replace real life experiences. They think it's expensive, that it's not easy to scale. And one of my favorites And this is definitely a highlight. And I've got a little excerpt about this particular section that you can read online for free. But this was about the misconception that VR is dead. So you get that a lot in the media. You see these news articles and all of this stuff coming out around how VR is dead. The problem is that is mostly based on forecast assumptions on consumer sales of headsets that the market has failed to realize. Instead, what I did is I said, well, look, future forecasts, they're very difficult to get accurate. You can use them as a guide, but you can't rely on them. And you certainly, you can't rely on them 100%, and you certainly can't use them to determine whether an entire industry like XR is dead or not. So I took a different approach. I went back into the past and I looked over the last 100 years of technologies like the internet, like tablets, like the landline, the telephone. And I saw and I did an analysis on how long it took those technologies to become mainstream, and applied that to virtual reality. And the summary of this, the whole analysis, is basically that virtual reality is well within the timeline or the realm of how long it's taken past technologies to become adopted in mainstream society. So I'm not at all worried. And anyone who hears, VR is dead anywhere online, completely dismiss that and look at some real data-driven arguments for where we're standing now in the industry. And then I'll finally close off, Rob, and say that we end with a little bit of a chapter around why now is the right time for the technology, because virtual reality has been around for ages. It's you can push it back as far as you want, but from a technological or digital perspective, it's certainly been around since the 60s. And most notably, many might remember that it got its heyday or there was a lot of hype about it in the early 90s, and that sort of subsided. So why now, in 2020 or 2021 and beyond, is it, such a viable technology? So I go into a little bit of that, conclude, and then provide a bonus chapter on some of the more technical aspects of the technology for people to read if they'd like to dig into that a little bit more.
Well, you've done a sterling job of the book. It's a complex subject, and as you say, it's moving quite quickly. And I'm really glad you've done it. And I like the way that you've kind of broken it down into bite-sized pieces as well, because it in terms of how you've put it together, it does make it, a good book that you can kind of pick up, put down, go back to when you need to. So, yeah, absolutely great job on that. So, in terms of the industry right now, you mentioned it's been around for a while. But it seems to be gaining momentum. Is any of that momentum kind of down to the pandemic, do we think? What's your perspective on that?
So there's definitely momentum as a result of the pandemic. And we see that now because the interest that we're getting in PwC has exceeded pre-pandemic levels when it comes to XR. But I wouldn't say that the pandemic has been the silver bullet that many in the XR industry were placing their bets on. I think it's certainly been a catalyst for talking about XR, as well as, to be fair, a lot of other innovations in the world, but definitely not the be-all, end-all. And I think that's a positive thing, because if the pandemic was the sole reason for virtual reality and augmented reality's rise into the mainstream and the reason that it has value in the world, then I think the industry would be in a very bad place. Thankfully, that is not the case. And even once the pandemic subsides and once we're able to return to some semblance of normality, the value of virtual reality and augmented reality will still carry on. And that's a really positive message.
Yeah, great answer. I completely agree. Obviously, we've seen a lot of video adoption over the past kind of year or so. People have gone home to work, and people are now crying out for more immersive experiences, which is absolutely fantastic for the industry. But as you say, I think it's got a very, very sustainable future going forward. And just thinking about the future, my final question for you today, Jeremy, is kind of, what next for you and the industry?
So I'm super excited just to see more interest in XR grow. I'm excited for my team and I to experiment with new technologies within XR, and even technologies outside of XR that could potentially converge with XR to provide even more value. So if you think about the Internet of Things and bringing that data from machinery into your view in augmented reality and being able to see, just with a glance, how a piece of machinery is performing, how to navigate your world. And from a VR perspective, looking at technologies like volumetric capture, which is super exciting. And for those of you who don't know, volumetric capture is basically a method of creating a three-dimensional video of someone effectively. That's the easiest summary to think of it as. And we've used this technology already just a few months ago in a project that we've built and we've got running on a standalone headset. But it gives you the best of both worlds. So it gives you this sort of almost photorealistic feel, but at the same time, it gives you that depth information that you sometimes don't get with 360 video, where you've got one perspective and you can only look around, but you can't move around forward and back, left and right. But with volumetric, you get that realism and you get that ability to explore that world in a positional manner rather than only a rotational manner. So I'm just super excited to explore all of these different areas and keep trying to push the envelope and understand this better and provide, break down the myths and, crush them online and start giving start helping other business leaders understand the true benefits of the technology. Hopefully Reality Check will help with that slightly. And also, I'm thinking about the next book, actually, despite how painful it was to write this one. But I'm thinking about looking to the past this time and looking at the history of virtual reality and augmented reality, which I think is extremely varied, exciting, and interesting. That may be pitched more at geeks than than business leaders. We'll see how it goes.
Sometimes they say you got to look back to go forward, right?
Exactly.
Very interesting. So, Reality Check is available to buy now. What's the best way to get hold of it?
So if you go to realitycheckxr.com, you'll be able to see, a little summary of the book, all the chapters outlined, and it also has links to Amazon, booksellers in different parts of the world. So you can follow those links through to get it from there.
Great. Hey, Jeremy, it's been fantastic speaking to you today. Thanks so much for joining me.
It's been a real pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me. See you.
And that's it from us. If you've enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to XR Today News and give this video a quick share on social. It's always appreciated. And if you're an XR fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can join us using the XR News hashtag on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. Our social links are in the description. I'm Rob Scott from XR Today. Thanks for watching.